Jose Ramos-Horta, welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me.
Do you have a moral advantage over the Australian government during these negotiations after they manipulated the original deal through espionage?
Well, I hate to say having moral advantage. I would say only Australians, being a society that I know, very fair-minded. Australians through history were always underdog. Australians always sympathize with the weaker. And so when Australia spied on us, cheated on us, even for people who engage in the decision, they must have felt uncomfortable, because that's how Australia is.
Let's talk about the current situation. By saying that you're open to doing a deal with China, if you can't make this deal work with Australia, is that really a serious option, or is it a negotiating position?
No, it is not a negotiating position, because any decision on the development of Greater Sunrise for us and for the joint venture, as well as for Australia, although Australian government is not directly involved, this is a matter for Timor-Leste and joint venture, has to be based on the basis of very serious study. The studies we have done, my own understanding of the whole complex situation, is that it's far more beneficial for everybody that the pipeline goes to Timor-Leste.
Let me come to that in just a moment. I just want to stay with China, because you are deeply practiced in the art of leverage. By bringing up China, was that nonetheless a blunt warning to Australia that you could ignore the close ties of the past and choose to orient yourself towards China?
No. I personally will never ignore the close ties. We are far too close to Australia. Australia is a strategic partner of Timor-Leste. But having close ties with China, particularly in enabling the development of Greater Sunrise, is not a security threat to Australia, is not a Chinese maritime naval base in Timor-Leste. It's just a pipeline, and the Chinese would be an investor, like Australia would be, like South Korea would be. So, and it wouldn't be entirely a Chinese option. We have Indonesia. Indonesia is a serious potential partner in the development of Greater Sunrise.
Nonetheless, I think Australia has veto power over any third-party involvement under the existing agreement. Have you discussed the China option with Penny Wong?
No. No, I just mentioned in general potential partners that we have to look for. And for us, for me, absolute priority is the development of this with Australia, with a joint venture, if necessary, if possible, involving Indonesia, our closest neighbor. And they have a giant gas field called Abadi next door to Greater Sunrise. So one possibility is a joint development with Indonesia, connecting the two. But that's just off the top of my head. I don't know whether it's feasible.
Just explain the urgency of this. As we saw in my colleague's report there is a clock ticking for Timor-Leste. How urgent is it for you to get a resolution? How much hangs on this moment?
It is urgent, because in any case, been dragging on for almost 2 decades, something that should have been resolved 10 years ago. Urgent not only because of the so-called financial cliff, we would need additional resources from Greater Sunrise for really activating the Timorese economy, particularly as we join ASEAN by next year, 2023. Tremendous opportunity for Timor-Leste to be a significant energy sector, energy security player in Southeast Asia.
Nonetheless, if you go ahead with the Darwin version of this, where the gas is processed in Darwin, I think under the agreement you still get 80% of the revenue. Isn't that what you need urgently, which is a bird in the hand, money in hand.
Yes, but we have a far more benefits, much more job creation and diversification of the economy with the pipeline coming to Timor-Leste, which enable us to have, let's say, a fertilizer plant for us and for export. So a base pipeline going to Timor-Leste, and that has a multiplying effect on the ground in Timor-Leste with direct benefits to us, direct and indirect.
There are also questions about whether or not any Chinese companies, state-owned enterprises, actually have the capacity to perform have the necessary technical skills for a project like this. Have you had any discussions with any Chinese entities about the potential for their involvement?
Yes, I did. Over the last 2-3 years, I did. And they are very interested in, and they even told me they are very interested even to be the sole partners. And when I shared the message with Mr. Shanana Guzman, he said, sole, no. Without even any Chinese involvement, the Australians, the Americans already worried about Timor-Leste, Chinese influence in Timor. Can you imagine we go alone with China? No, it would not happen like that.
So who were you talking to? Which of the Chinese enterprises made that kind of offer
with Chinese officials in mainland in China itself, but very informally to explore ideas and so on. And Timor-Leste never made an official approach to China. For instance, we do one of the few countries in the world that has no loans from China. We don't have a single cent of debt to China, but we do have an excellent relationship with China. Many Chinese businesses in Timor-Leste, particularly trade. And that has been tremendously helpful to our economy because construction material, building material, and consumer items, clothing, shoes, bicycles, all become so much cheaper and affordable to our people.
So as we stand at the moment, you have got significant Chinese interest, and they're even offering to be a sole partner, whether or not you or Janana Guzman would accept it. That's the situation?
Yes, for those who are skeptical about whether the Chinese will be interested, I say, oh, yes, they are. Of course, China is a major energy consumer. They need a guaranteed supply. Of course they are, but it doesn't mean that that's our first choice or even our ultimate choice.
Nonetheless, by bringing up China, you certainly got everybody's attention. We'll have to leave it there, but Jose Ramos-Horta, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.